Welcome to the Frazzle podcast. I am Aoife Hughes, your host, where we talk about building boundaries to manage your energy and building systems to protect your time. I'm so thrilled to have Dr. Rhona Stallard here today. We are going to talk about how to manage challenging behaviour with children and how to build a boundary, hold a boundary, and really dig into what's going on behind these tantrums and how we can respond to it, how we can manage the mom guilt when we do snap, and how we really just respond in this really stressful situation. Dr. Rhona, thank you so much for being here today. So thrilled to have you.
Thank you for having me, Aoife. I'm delighted to join you, and I love talking about this topic, so I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
And it's such a big topic, one that comes up with clients a lot, and even for me personally, because it is really stressful. I talk with clients a lot about how we manage stress because a lot of the times we can't control it, but we can control how we respond. So, really excited to have you here to talk about this and how we can manage our emotions around it. But before we get into that, tell me a bit more about you and kind of how you got into this space.
Sure. I have been researching early childhood for about 10 years. And of course, when I have my own children, things changed a little bit. It is different, the felt sense of how you regulate yourself when you're not interacting with your own children. It's a different perspective. And I distinctly remember when I was first time mum, I was very surprised to find that I just felt at sea. And I often tell the story where I had previously in 2018, I had done quite a big sailing race, and it leaves from Wicklow and you sail around the whole of Ireland without stopping. So it's a significant challenge. And I distinctly remember somebody who's been a great mentor to me, they said to me, gosh, Rhona, you're going to find it so hard to give up your freedom when you have kids. So that was about, going off on this adventure. So anyway, we went off and it was plain sailing. But at some stage, not long into the race, the sea became incredibly choppy. It was raining, we were required to be out during the night. Then when we were going to sleep, we were soaking wet. A lot of people were sick on the boat. So it wasn't possible to eat because first of all, it was a storm. And second of all, people were vomiting everywhere. So the standard was low. Yeah. And you couldn't sleep because you were soaked. But ironically, I often thought of that when I had a young baby, because that experience of having a young baby for me was so emotive and so powerful and so special, like doing this race, and such an achievement. Not every second of it is shiny, happy people moment, So I suppose that first person experience really opened my eyes in many ways. And what I've been trying to do since is think about what I know in my work and research, and think about how I use that within my everyday life. And what I notice sometimes, Aoife, is that sometimes I have a problem and I have to really think about how I overcome this. And other times I know I'm doing lots of stuff that I'm not even aware of that would be really helpful for other people to know, because I just happen to have insight. So that's a little bit about my background.
I love the sailing analogy and sometimes it's plain sailing and then sometimes it's just flat out like the Titanic where you're like, oh my God, this is going down and you're so lost at sea. And it is like all the analogies come out, but they're like, you're in a sea of stress, like you are.
You literally sometimes don't have time to have a shower or eat. That's very literal.
And then we bring the sleep into it. It's like torture, but I mean, it's very rewarding at the same time.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. But I think that is a brilliant analogy. And then that you were able to, first of all, congratulations on doing that. Sounds amazing. Kind of sailing, that achievement in itself. And then in terms of your research, so you specialize in this space and you lecture, right? Saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to say, to actually to bring you to the very, very heart of my particular interest of research, how impressed you were, Aoife, when I told you about my stoic ability to do this race and my bravery and my stick with it and my ability to fail forward. And we take complete and utter for granted the intuitive knowledge that we require as mums. We have that same similar lived experience as mums, and nobody says, wow, that is, you do all that on no sleep. All you've eaten today are a couple of raisins and the mist of your hairspray. Congratulations.
True.
There's no one patting you on the back. It's largely unrecognized by society, and it's unrecognized by ourselves. And that's a significant piece. And that's probably where my research would have started, around that in particular, in the lack of recognition towards early childhood educators. And it's quite stark when we think about how they're positioned within society. And so I haven't directly researched the position of mums, but I have applied this knowledge and perspective to thinking about that identity, because it's up and down for sure. And if you weren't a mum, sometimes listening to the narratives of mums, it might be off-putting, but the reality that we don't talk about it is how incredibly rewarding it is because of this sometimes roller coaster experience. And all of the seemingly intuitive knowledge that goes into that is unrecognized. And what that intuitive knowledge is what I would call in my research a horizontal knowledge. So it's knowing deep interest in your children arises out of your love for them, noticing things that are important to them, like their interests, like their routines, like when they're about to get sick, like when they're working on something developmentally, like those big feelings, and navigating them. And it's not a sort of the same technical knowledge that we tend to value in society, like writing emails or being an accountant or something.
100%. And it's so great that you highlighted that, because not only is there no recognition for it, but we're actually so hard on ourselves. We just compare ourselves. We don't think we're doing a good job from the get-go. It's such a challenging journey. I had a play date with my 5-year-old and a couple of friends. I don't know, I was giving them nuggets and chips and I didn't give them a fork. One joked saying, "You're fired." And we had a big joke about it. And I said, "But you can't fire me because I work for free." Like that's it. Like that's the job we do 24/7. You don't get paid. You don't get recognition. I'm hard on myself all the time. Am I doing the right job? Am I doing the right thing? And that's why it's so valuable to have you here today to kind of say, "Do you know what? You're doing a great job." But also when we are at sea, when we are in these big moments of stress, like tantrums, how do we regulate ourselves so that we can support our children to be more regulated? And that's what I'd love to kind of dig into today.
One of the things that I like to do, especially since I've started thinking about this from my own perspective, I often pause and just take a broader lens, right? And thinking about those perfectionism tendencies, for want of a better word. A lot of what that is rumination, and what we think about ourselves, and that sort of negativity bias. And if we just pause for a moment, would you want your adult child to have those ruminations about themselves? Is that what you would want for them in their growing up? And when I think about that, then I think about, what do I want instead? That helps me to respond, that helps me to put myself in perspective, that helps me to think about what I'm modeling, what counts in the moment today. So I think as well, then, when we're just talking about these big emotions, they are really, really hard. I know they're hard. And some of the things that I can say today in the details, it's not because I read it in a book, it's not because I've spoken to lots of mums, which I have, but it's because I know, because I know, So I think that the people experience, because those big emotions, those challenges, they are challenging, they're difficult, understandably, when a child is dysregulated. As much as we need to soothe them, the co-regulation is dynamic, it's back and forth. We're trying not to feed off that dysregulation, which is really hard when the noise is loud, there's demands from other children, there's something cooking, and you don't want so anything bad, untoward to happen. And then the postman rings, and your sensory overload is hard. In addition, you are asking yourself, is this good enough? Am I doing right? What do I do next? What are my values? I think that's all going on, that we're just not really sure what to do. And hopefully today we can demystify some of that.
For me, what I struggle with is, and I've done a lot of work on this, because what I work with clients around and what I do in the Life Work Balance Blueprint is we understand what our stress triggers are, so we can build awareness around that. So when we understand what they are, we can manage it, anchor ourselves so that we are in a calm place. Like, the whole goal is to just be calm so that we can manage their emotions better, as opposed to, and I know this myself, if I'm stressed, if something at work is stressing me out, and then I pick the kids up from creche and they are screaming at me, it's really hard to manage that and not snap. And a couple of tools that I work with and try to model for them is, I always say, like a stress song. Like, if we're in the car, and I'll just say, do you know what? This is too much. I'm putting on my stress song. And they know it's Dance Monkey. I put it on and they understand, okay, mom's stressed. We're going to put this on. We're going to, like, move our arms, get the endorphins going, cancel out the cortisol stress. But that's just a tool. And another tool that I use probably the most is the inhale for 4 and exhale for 8, 3 times. And that's your body telling your brain that you're safe, to just calm down that cortisol. So they're tools that I talk about, but sometimes it's not easy to access those tools when you're in a really stressful moment and you don't know how to respond. For example, yesterday, right? So Oisin, who's nearly 3, I said no to telly, and he was so frustrated that I think I said you can watch a bit after dinner as opposed to before dinner. He got so dysregulated that he hit me, and that happens a lot. And I never know how to manage that. I would kind of hold his hands and say, no, thank you. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to hit. But I don't know if that's the right thing to do. What's your take on it?
So just a couple of things to pick up on what you said very literally. This is too much. And it just, again, going back to the ruminations, I know that when you are in this thought cycle and the thought ultimately is winding its way around to this is too much, for me, that thought is on the fringe of dysregulation for me.
Yeah.
And that's what you said. Then I implement this timeout stress management thing. And what a lovely thing that you have, that sort of a reset, and it's a little bit of a context switch. And we don't need to go into over verbalizing everything, the negotiating, stop, don't do this, stop that, put that, It's just like music on. Okay, let's all down regulate together. So that's one thing. Then the other thing to notice is if something happens frequently, like this is a repeated pattern. So I say no, then the child hits me. What is likely is that that often happens at similar times of the day, each time it happens. So you could probably think back and think that it really likely happens before lunch, or on the way out the door in the morning, or on the way home. Every time a child hits, they don't always hit for the same reason, but there are common themes. So if they often become dysregulated, getting into the car, leaving the childcare setting, what's likely happening is that's quite a significant transition for them. Also, you're saying that you've just literally thrown yourself in the car. So you've also perhaps not had the time to give yourself 5 minutes to down-regulate, to prepare for what they're going to need. And what they need sometimes at the end of the day is quite intense emotional holding, because no matter how high quality a childcare setting is, ultimately they have to hold themselves to a higher level of personal responsibility than they do when they're at home. And then when they get home, again, like before a meal, it could be very simply hungry and wanting to zone out. So like what I do, and I have a resource, Aoife, so if anyone's listening and they want the resource, they can send me a DM on Instagram, and I'm happy just to send it out to them. I think of these three areas that I'll tell you about, and then I also think about what the context is, what's going on before this big moment, as you said, what do I do in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe after the moment. So if that's a really common situation that your child wants to watch telly before the meal, and then there's an issue, you first of all think about, what are my values around screen time? What do I want for them? What am I satisfied with offering? And then you offer it at a time of day that maybe is going to work best for them and for you. So sometimes it's okay to make those shifts. In particular, in relation to something that's happening in the moment, what I can find really, really helpful is to say less words and to really say as little as possible. Again, negotiations where I'm sort of saying, well, if you do this, then I'll do it later, where I'm entering into a back and forth. Really, what I'm entering into is a power struggle. It might not necessarily be about the thing itself. It might be around sort of claiming your attention, your time, your focus onto them, or claiming that sense of having some control over the situation. So trying to understand the why of the behavior. And I think that can be challenging, because the reality is that a lot of us who have children haven't become within a country mile of a child ever. It's the way that we live in society now. And then we expect ourselves to have all of this intuitive knowledge because that's the standard that we set for ourselves. And previously, if you were in this so-called village that we hear spoken about, and that you would have gotten the support, well, actually, it wasn't just that you were luxuriating in tons and tons of support from all your aunties. What you were actually doing is you were pitching in. So you were doing the work. So you were seeing the children, seeing how people responded to the children, what worked, what you liked, what your values might be, and differentiating on that basis. We don't have that opportunity now. So we're kind of learning on the fly what our expectations of a child should be, and what they need, and trying to put those things together. So in the moment, in a situation like that, for me, I think what can be really important is slowing myself down, less talking. I know when I'm talking, for me, that's a sign, that I am getting dysregulated.
Okay.
And then with the less talking, you're not entering the negotiation. You don't have to respond to every single objection that is put your way. And the way you physically position yourself sometimes can be really quite helpful to see things from a different perspective. And it buys you a little bit of time to make a decision. Am I saying no because I think that it's really important to implement the standard and I need to stick to my boundary right now? Am I saying no because there's an inherent need that is important for the child? No, you can't have a snack right now because dinner's coming in 10 minutes. And if they eat the snack, they won't eat the nutritious meal. So knowing why. So we've chatted about this before, Aoife, where I have pointed to the language around boundaries, in particular in relation to child rearing, in particular for young children. And I've said that I think that boundaries sort of infer things like keeping someone separate from yourself, or having, space for yourself. And when it comes to young children, what they most likely need is flexible standards, where we have a degree of flexibility, and we don't have to do the exact same thing every single time. They are very astute. They are hardwired actually to watch us closely and to tune into us. That's literally how they survive. Like an infant who's born, like in the early days, if you're changing a nappy of your newborn, and if you move very slowly your body to the left or the right, their whole frame will turn to face you. They are hardwired to tune in. We don't have to be rigid, I believe. So in the moment, slowing down, slowing the language, what that's really helping them to do is to think more smoothly. That's the way I describe it. In that space of the co-regulation, we're bringing them to our more regulated place rather than going to a dysregulated place. I would find myself that sometimes when I slow down, slow the language and slow the movement, and move perhaps lower down to where they're at, or side by side with them, I actually can get a literal different perspective. I can see that I haven't seen. And that happens quite often when there's siblings having a disagreement.
In that instance, I saw this probably on Instagram somewhere. When I notice they're dysregulated, I always offer a hug and say, I know when I'm upset, I like a hug. Do you want a hug? And a lot of the time when Oisín is in a spin, he doesn't, but then he will come over to me maybe a minute or two later when he's calm. He's like, I want to hug now. But in that instant, and this is the challenge with the standard, the boundary, that you're holding a boundary for a particular reason. Let's just say the TV. When we're recording this now, we're going back to school soon. That any boundaries I'd set in place, there were standards, kind of went out the window a bit with any routine. But we'd had, say, a boundary where we wouldn't have telly Monday to Thursday. But now that's gone out the window, they have telly every day. But so I can see why that's confusing for them. But I said to him in this instance, you can watch a little bit after dinner for 30 minutes to calm down. And that's probably the wrong thing to do. It should be before dinner. But anyway, these are all the things that are going on in your head. But in terms of being rigid, like I then battle with myself and go, oh, sometimes it's easier to just let them do it. But that's not the right thing either. And I think that's the bit that if I am really stressed out about other things that are going on, I'll sometimes just go, it's easier to just let them have what they want because they're screaming and my nervous system can't take it. I know deep down that's not the right thing to do either. So it's like, that's what I find very challenging to navigate. I can see that I do it now and my awareness is better. So I've set work on building these standards, boundaries, and it's sometimes the challenge is holding it.
It is really cool that you know what you want, that you want to not have telly Monday to Thursday. That's crystal clear. The rationale is clear. That busyness and that accountability that we have for ourselves and that pressure that we put on ourselves, we don't want that necessarily for our future children. You are doing your job. You are doing an amazing job. It is more than good enough. It is supporting them. I personally would find that I also do not respond to every situation like a textbook. And what I notice about myself is that helps me become aware of what worked this time, what didn't work, and what I might do differently. Okay, so all I'm just saying about the telly is if it didn't work and it caused a battle, simply removing that power struggle by inserting the television at a different point on the next day might redirect things. But if I just go back, I kind of spoke about tuning in the moment. And I think the other thing is because this feels like a battle, what ultimately is happening when it feels like a battle, what's happening is you are perhaps entering that power struggle. That's the battlefield, is the power struggle. That's the feeling of the battle. So that's the tuning in. The other thing I talk about is trust. We trust that our children will have big emotions. That's just a baseline reality of life. In fact, I would nearly feel like if my kids didn't have big emotions, that I'd be a little bit worried. They're so regulated all the time and they're so tiny. They need a space to figure out how to negotiate these experiences. And because we don't want them, again, in the future, when they will inevitably have a bad boss and the boss unkindly says something harsh in an email, that the only thing that they know how to do is react with a harsh email back. So this trust piece is that we trust that they will definitely have big emotions. That is okay. That's a part of life. Inherently, they know what to do. They will disagree with us. That's good. That's good. They can give you that pushback. And they trust that our response is relatively predictable and consistent. Okay. So that's in the moment. Outside of the moment, you have maybe a chat. It's coming into the autumn. One of the things that's really important to us as a family is being really considerate of how we use technology and television. And this is what I would like for you. My promise in that is that every day I'm going to have 10 minutes where my phone is in a drawer and I sit down and hang out with you, because that's really important to me. So maybe it's more of an exchange, and what you're doing is you are proactively filling that power bucket without being requested of you in the only way that they know how. There is no child that I can think of from most ages who's going to say, you know what, pretty long day, I'm kind of hungry. Notice I'm getting a little bit tired. Perhaps we could read a story together.
Yeah.
Right? So what I
Civilization.
do is lamp you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just hit you instead. Yeah.
A subtle pump will, who needs words?
Get it. Get it.
I over-articulate things. I've personally found, and I know you have systems as well, but I don't get time actually during the week when I work full time, so I don't get time to cook. Everything comes out of a freezer. My systems aren't as good as yours because there's several days where I'm cooking rice and I realize the thing beside it is stew, which is terribly disappointing. But
I like rice with stew, sidebar. But anyway.
it's an insult to, the end of a heart.
Yeah, it is. You want us good.
So, maybe there's a time there in that agreement that there's a 10 minutes required there. So what we do a lot in early childhood settings is we avail of post-its to write down things like children's interests or just to give us reminders. So if you had a little pack of post-its, what you could do is ask them, what would you like to do? I'd love to spend a bit of time with you and catch up. And then they could say, read a story, play cards, take out Play-Doh. And you say, you know what, this is really important to me. I'm going to write this down in my post-it, pop it up here because that's our no phone time. Put my phone in the drawer, make that's away. Is that away? Do you see that's away? I see it's away. You won't watch telly, will you? No. Okay, so you put the remote away. I put the phone. Let's sit down. And so what I'm talking about there then, if you notice, was the first thing was the context. What was happening was before dinner. Okay. The next thing I was talking about was the proactive strategy. Okay? And then the next thing, when we're getting into these flexible boundaries, is when I need to say no. We need to uphold that. And I do think, some of that goes down to the values, the expectations I have of children, a gentle awareness of child stage, development needs, my personal own child, their context of the day. And for me personally, within that frame of proactive strategies, what I like to do is I like to think about how little I can say no. So I can say little as possible so that my day, and I can avoid instruction as much as possible. So my day is not, no, don't do that, stop doing that, put that down, why do you do this? And I'm worn out from listening to myself. I'm sick of myself.
Yeah.
And of course they zone me out.
Yeah.
No?
Okay, I love that. I think, oh my God, there's so many nuggets that you've just given us there. And I'm just actually trying to digest it and think, okay, so if I'm like fast forward to going to the creche, and if I just know going into it, it's been a long day for both of us. And I think that's such a great point that you make that, look, all day they're independent enough while they're in creche and school. So then when they come home to us, they let it all out because it's a safe space and they trust us and they can. If we're privileged really to be at the other end of it, it's to be mindful of that and notice patterns, okay? Because it is the witching hour that whatever 5, 6 to 7, 8, that they're hungry and they are letting it all out. So how can we respond better? And I think that what you say about values is really important, and it's so specific to everyone and everyone's different. So say when I gave that example about TV Monday to Thursday, the reason I did that is because when we turn the telly off, it is like a scene out of The Exorcist. So like that's why I'm like, I actually can't deal with that. And Thursday, it is a nice little break where we'll throw the telly on and they know then they'll get a Thursday to Sunday. Now I may reevaluate that and actually give them a shorter amount every day. I'm going to have a think about that, but that's me setting that boundary. But I think what is important when I think to what happened yesterday is that it's been inconsistent, like in the summer. Like they knew where they stood with that boundary and now they don't because it's inconsistent over the summer. And that's actually a me problem. I just realized that when you said that. So it's understanding your values and actually not and what I've worked on myself is the perfectionism. Like, stop trying to be a perfect mother. Good is good enough. And stop comparing yourself to what other people do because it's what you value and what's important to you around whether it's screen time, whether it's food, right? There's no right or wrong. It's what's important to you. So that kind of came out to me loud and clear. And then what you were saying about patterns. So, okay, we know now that it's just a tough time in the day. What can we do to alleviate it? Okay, give them a small snack to keep them going. Just set the boundary so they know where they stand. And then also getting down at their level, what you were saying, and just being there or standing beside them. So when you said that, and when they are spiraling, do you literally just stand there beside them when they're kind of going crazy?
Yeah. I do think some of the proactive strategies can alleviate some of the more overwhelmed sort of tsunami experiences of dysregulation, that catching it a little bit early, but not always. And again, going back to that point, is that their emotions are permitted in their safe space with their safe person.
Yeah.
You know, that's okay. So yeah, that being nearby, present, slow, quiet, saying less, it gives you space to reflect. Sometimes it can depend on the child. Sometimes, like, physically you want them to be safe and you don't want them to hurt you. So if it's a case that they're significantly overwhelmed and they are physically showing that to you with things like biting, hitting, what I would want to do is I would want to prevent them from actually completing the action. So for me, that's a very passive type of resistance, to not allow their hands hit me or their legs to kick me or them to bite me. And it's much easier to do that when I'm side by side. If I'm facing them on, it's a more confrontational pose, and it's easier to get out a bit of a thump there, to be honest with you.
Right. No, and like as I was doing it, I actually ran away yesterday. He was going 90 with it. Normally would hold his arm. And then I also heard, this is the problem. You have so many conflicting things you hear, but to try and make a joke out of it. So I tried to kind of run away and make a joke out of it. And then he was following me. It's a strategy. It was probably a poor one, but I was trying to kind of distract him from it and make a joke out of it and run away. It was probably not great.
The thing that I find all of the time is that what's happening, because there's that little gap of, you know, not having the space to think, what do I want? What's happening right now that we've just gone through? And then what people are doing is they're looking at Instagram. I think there's a lot of good stuff on Instagram. People say it's tat. I think there's okay stuff there. But if you take it in isolation and you're not looking at your own context, your own child, you know, it can be difficult to apply, and it can be difficult because we both use Instagram, as you know, to convey something meaningful in that snippet, you know, so you won't get, well, use this if, when, da, 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 da. And sometimes, like, you need to know your child. Sometimes standing back a little, or them having their own space, might be what they need or want. Sometimes actually physically getting out of that situation and changing the plan might be what they need or want. When we're talking about, again, this word of boundaries, it can be a little bit fluid, and it can mean everything. Like you had said that you have this standard about the television. That's a really cool standard to have. And what you've noticed about your children is that, which is really common, that it causes dysregulation, or like some people might notice, but might be actually later in the day that they're less regulated. So if you had the TV off Monday to Thursday for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you had it on for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you started to notice the times of the day that they're dysregulated, that it was after the telly, and there's a significant difference, it would be an important thing for you to have and uphold and implement. But as you say, when you're inconsistent, they don't know what to expect. And I would find that if you're implementing one thing from Instagram one day, a different thing from Instagram the next day, that's a little bit inconsistent. And then what happens is you get frustrated with yourself for not having done things good enough. And then we're getting into the rumination of, this is too much.
Yeah. And can you explain to everyone what rumination is?
Exactly.
Like, really overthinking, isn't it?
It's that thought cycle. It's what it is the thought cycle. So in particular with the dysregulation, we have the sensation, the physical sensation, the emotion. And what happens is that kind of works our way up into our thoughts. This is too much. This is every day. They never listen to me. I'm exhausted too. Whatever it is, And that thought, actually, if you start to notice it, it is in a loop, and it's similar things repeating itself. And another thing that you had mentioned, maybe it's a snack, say, now that we're getting back into the autumn and the routine, it is highly likely that coming in the afternoon is, first of all, it's a time of transition. And for me personally, I believe that most transitions are times when children can become dysregulated. And second of all, that particular one comes at the end of the day. What I actually find can be quite regulating for me is a cold glass of water. So it might be you realize, oh, sugar, this is the time, dash out the door. You haven't had any break in the car, singing songs, more energy. Sometimes getting in the door, actually, cold glass of water can be what everyone needs. And maybe they think they're hungry and they're thirsty because it's a signal that I mix up. And then that creates a little pause in all of the doing, and you're inherently getting low, to give them the drink or whatever and to take it back off them. And you're having a drink yourself.
Yeah.
And it's just a space to catch a breath.
I probably prefer a glass of wine to a glass of water. We'll take the water. But yeah, no, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. But yeah, okay. So I think you have actually shared so many proactive strategies there. A lot of it, you kind of feel like, like what you were saying there about the consistency, but only after talking to you there and saying it out loud, I realize, okay, in the summer, I've been inconsistent with boundaries. And that's something that I can take in with me now, like going into the September reset and sit down and go, okay, what actually do I want this to look like? And then how do I do this without saying no? Right? Because they don't want to hear that. But as opposed to, okay, we're going to do this instead of doing this, we might do this. Instead of TV, we might do a jigsaw. And I really like that idea with the post-its because it's given them the control as well.
And it's taking them where their development is at, because they work much, much better with concrete things.
Yeah.
So that concrete thinking. And like, it's okay that some habits changed in the summer, but it's what we're talking about now is that within that flexibility, that it's not rigid limits in a moment, it's a little bit of a broader context. Something that I've been thinking about just in the last few days around this no, which is really, you've heard what I've said, which is that reframe and redirect, and doing that quite often. What they'll actually do, if you implement these things, what you should see is you should see them modeling it for themselves. So in a couple of months, you might actually see them saying to each other, oh, we were going to do this, or they were slightly become dysregulated. Let's actually switch tasks. Would you like to play a jigsaw with me or play cards with me? I can see that sometimes when I've been modeling and teaching a different way to do things. We expect our children to think the same way as us, but to process emotions differently. And in actual fact, these teeny tiny little things process emotions quite similarly, but their thinking is quite different. So when we're modeling and teaching how to react through this difficult situation over time, they'll understand that. So maybe the first time you did the monkey dance, there was a little bit of resistance, but about the 10th or 15th time, everyone knew what to expect when the song came on. One of the things that I think about if I'm going to be intentional, I like to say no to things that I feel will be a privilege later down the road. So like, for example, maybe it's staying up late or watching telly late or a certain type of sugary sweets. And I feel like if I say no now and kind of kick that can down the road, then in a year or 2 years, that'll feel like a big deal. That's another way of interpreting boundaries. And it's just, again, pulling out the lens, moving away from this moment that perhaps we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to fix and get right.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I gave the example at the start with Oshin because he's nearly 3, but would you say that this is all relevant to kids of all ages?
Yeah. I see a lot of stuff about nervous system and regulation, dysregulation, and co-regulation, self-soothing on the internet. And I think it's great because when I trained as a play therapist back in, I think it was around 2013, that was the language that we used. And I never saw it anywhere. And it was sort of a way, sort of a gate kept information, and now it's a language that is used commonly. But anyway, yes, I think it is relevant for older children. I think, again, just checking in with those expectations of older children, like a child perhaps who's starting primary school, that is probably one of the biggest challenges they face to date. And they're going to maybe feel pressure to succeed. And when they find it tricky during the day, they're going to come home and need to unload, and it will look like perhaps a younger child. And the other thing that I will say is this emphasis on self-regulation. Like, if something is going on for you and it's bothering you, an awful lot of the time we co-regulate. How many people still call mommy to soothe? Or a sibling or a close friend? So how many of us really self-regulate autonomously all of the time? Is that a goal?
Yeah. And that's one thing that I actually talk about in the blueprint as well, is those happiness hormones so cortisol, the stress hormone, that balances it out. And a simple thing like a hug, like, you get the oxytocin. If you hug your spouse, your child for 20 seconds, like, that's releasing oxytocin that cancels out that stress. So, like, that is co-regulation. Also, that kindness, that oxytocin kindness of talking to a friend and having that space to be heard, like you said. And so I think that is lovely to have the co-regulation. I think the trick is to understand in the moment, I'm stressed out, I'm not regulated. And I think that's the habit we need to build. And a lot of it is awareness and more conversations like this, because what happens is we snap, and that's always going to happen, right? Like, we can't beat ourselves up for that. We're still human, and that's how they learn too. And it's the good enough parent. We can't be perfect all the time. None of us are perfect humans. And if we do snap, don't ruminate over the mom guilt. You're not a bad parent. You're human. The rupture and repair. And I do that sometimes. If I do snap, I'll say, look, I'm sorry I shouted there. This is why I did it. So I think we can talk all day about this, Rhona.
I think we could go for a long time.
Yeah, but it's huge. And just that we are all in this together, we're all figuring it out. I believe it's your instinct, but having these tools at hand is so helpful, and kind of understand that we all do it, we all snap, but how can we regulate ourselves so that we can help to regulate our children? I know what my values are, and it's to set those boundaries or standards and to be able to hold them with conviction and not just, give in. But I think that the tools that you've shared today have been so helpful. We know that they're tired every day at the end of the day of crash, but actually now kind of going in, just being more intentional about it, going, okay, I'm going in. It's like you're battling up for armor. I'm getting ready. It's not going to be pretty. But that's normal because they're supposed to do that. And is there a pattern where they're dysregulated about a certain thing? Okay, how can I figure out a plan around that? And how can we work together? I really liked the post-it idea, visual post-it. This is what we're going to do. This is my phone is gone, the telly's off, and we're having this time together, because that's what I've learned on my journey so far. That trying to be the perfect parent, it's actually making the time quality and having that connection. So even if it's 10 minutes a day where you're having connection and you're reading a book and playing, good is good enough. It mightn't be an hour every day, but that's 10 minutes that you have together and you've connected.
Yeah.
Rhona, thank you so much for coming on today. I am so delighted that you're actually going to join the Life for Balance Blueprint and do a masterclass where we'll dig into these tools. Today is awareness and education and the chat. And I hope that all of you listening have come away with not only proactive tools, but come away kind of feeling a bit better about it, and knowing that we're all in this sea of dysregulation as ourselves and our kids. And I think that's so lovely the way you put it, that we co-regulate together and we're kind of figuring it out together as well.
Yeah. There's absolutely no mandate, desire, or recommendation to be perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. We're modeling that. Here's a mistake, and this is how I navigate it. It's like a daily goal.
Yeah. It is, and we're all just figuring it out. I loved the analogy with the sailing. There's highs and lows. There's such beautiful moments with them as well. Like
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Just being able to capture some of those tiny moments in whatever way works for you.
I know that there's going to be the challenging moments too. It's never
Yeah.
always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like I believe it's always going to be the highs and lows, like that ship that you mentioned at the start. So, Rhona, to wrap it up, we can find you, follow Rhona at PlayLab.
That's correct. Yeah, the _play_lab. And even if you search Rhona Stallard, it'll pop up and you can get in touch. If you'd like to reach out, if you want, I have the resource around the tantrums, and we had a lovely conversation there, but it's in a little bit more of that framework that you will be able to use to reflect. So I'm happy to send that out to any of your listeners.
Amazing. And you work directly with parents around
That's
this.
right. Yeah, I do. I have a community. So what I have inside of my community is supporting mums to support their toddler's well-being. So we have two sides to it. The first side is that space for ourselves to build self-compassion, just to be, to reflect. And so a lot of that work is reflecting much more generally than the big feelings on ourselves, Reiki sessions, tapping, that type of thing. And then I have a course roadmap, and that very much goes through everything from dealing with these scenarios to the challenging moments to what to expect, and with an emphasis on focusing on children's holistic development. So to support play, how to navigate things like routines in ways that are proactive. And then we have space to chat about the implementation of all this stuff as well. So it's a lovely little community, and meets about 3 times a month. And there's lots of recordings, the classes that have happened already.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rhona. It sounds like a brilliant resource to have. Just thank you for taking the time to come on and have this chat. I think make us feel a little bit better.
I'm glad that it was reassuring.
Thanks, Rhona. Appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Really hope that you've taken away some proactive tips, but most of all, just feel a bit better about the whole journey with the tantrums and the challenging behaviour and the boundaries. We are all in this together.